Right, we're up. Eric, are we up on TV as well?
You're all set.
All right, perfect. All right, good evening and welcome to the February 23rd, 2021 school committee meeting. I apologize for the delay. We are on some new technology, and first of all, I want to thank Stephanie Hoban for converting all of our video and being able to broadcast this on the LPS new YouTube channel. So thank you very much for making that happen. A couple of disclosures, as we've been saying throughout this, pursuant to Governor Baker's executive order issued March 12th, 2020, modifying requirements of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. This meeting is being held remotely. Before we get into any business, I do want to just take a moment. Our school community lost a member this week. Sophia Maglione was a student at Lynnfield Middle School. And many people have read about her courageous battle over the last few years. So before we get started, I'd just like to take a brief moment of silence and think of their family. All right, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the business of the meeting. The first thing that we have on the agenda tonight is the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the meeting minutes from the February 2nd, 2021 meeting, school committee meeting.
Second.
Stacy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right. So next we have, we will be hearing from Ava O'Brien with the student council report. Ava, thank you for your patience. I'm sure you were sitting here thinking and laughing at all the old people trying to figure out technology as we've become caricatures of what we thought we would be.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all had a great February break. This week, my report will be brief, as there's not very much going on at the high school because February break just ended. Winter sports have finished up, and currently, as of Monday, fall 2 sports have started. And this is football, cheerleading, volleyball, and indoor track. It's been brought to my attention that the music and drama department are discouraged as they're not allowed to partake in any of their previous activities, such as singing and acting. So they hope to be able to get back to that soon. And planning for senior prom and senior week have started. We've planned a plan A and a plan B, and we're very hopeful that we're able to have a senior week in some form.
Yeah, I know Mr. Cleary and Mr. Bates and a lot of parents are working hard, and there will be a senior week of some sort. Hopefully it is a plan A for senior week. So the numbers keep heading in the right direction. Any questions for Ava from the committee? All right. Thank you very much, Ava.
Thank you.
All right. Before we dive into the rest of the business, I want to read a brief statement that was put together by the committee to address there's just been a great deal of misinformation that's been disseminated since the last meeting, and it's making its way through social media. So on March 12th, 2020, 349 days ago, this committee had an emergency school committee meeting as the first cases of COVID-19 hit Lynnfield and the Lynnfield Public Schools. In the weeks and months that followed, knowing that parents, educators, and the community needed information and updates about our schools, and recognizing that information was changing on a daily and sometimes hourly basis, this committee met weekly, live stream meetings, and spoke with dozens of parents to make sure our community was informed of how our district was moving forward. Both Superintendents Tremblay and Vogel, as well as the entire administrative leadership team and the school committee, spent thousands of collective hours making sure this community was up to speed on plans moving forward. And while it may not have been perfect, based on the feedback from the community and input from neighboring towns, I can say with certainty that this educational leadership team has done an exceptional job getting our schools open, keeping our kids and educators safe, and addressing COVID outbreaks on a case-by-case basis, even when we spiked in November and December. Any member of this community who makes up tales about a lack of transparency, who has never watched a school committee meeting, contacted a principal, the superintendent, or a school committee meeting, is simply willfully uninformed. If anyone has concerns about the decisions that have been made based on the data that was available at the time, let's discuss. And instead of making suggestion in public, why not speak to school leaders? You may be surprised to learn that many or all of the ideas that were vetted and unfortunately not feasible. There also seems to be some confusion about the decision to bring kindergarten students back full-time starting on May 1st. Superintendent Vogel, Dr. Dwyer, Mrs. Weiland, Nurse Rebello, and the LTA and kindergarten teachers, aides, and all the employees within each building worked incredibly hard to find a way to get this plan to fruition. And the plan itself had a half a dozen potential single points of failure, ranging from public health metrics to the availability of desks and many others. Moreover, any one of those points could have tripped up that plan, which is why it was not announced until all the boxes were checked and the plan was finalized by all involved stakeholders. This plan was weeks in the making, and to imply that parents complaining on a Tuesday caused the plan to be created on a Wednesday and released on a Friday is patently false and incredibly disrespectful to our educators who are working so hard for your kids. Another issue that seems to be misunderstood and subsequently miscommunicated is what the CDC, DESE, the governor of Massachusetts, and the president of the United States are referring to when they say in-person learning. There seems to be a belief out there that this phrase refers to full-time in-person learning. It does not. It simply refers to getting kids in at least one day a week for in-person. If you want to provide another district as an example for what Lynnfield could, or in your opinion, should be doing, please do the research ahead of time and understand their facilities and public health metrics relative to Lynnfield. And regardless, our goal has not changed since the beginning of the pandemic, which is to get as many kids in school as much as possible while keeping our students and educators safe per the guidelines set by the CDC. I'm encouraged by the news that came out today from DESE that will help get us there faster. Finally, I want to end on this note. We are asking our teachers, administrators, and staff to do more than they've ever done before. It's hard, it's exhausting, it's new. They're doing an amazing job for our families. The LTA was one of, if not the first teachers union in the state to come to an agreement on hybrid learning. And through every step of this process, they have been exceptional partners as we discuss what comes next. The members of this committee talk to parents and school committee members in other districts, and despite what a small proportion of our parents think, Lynnfield has done a remarkable job partnering with our teachers to maximize learning in this situation. Yet in spite of all this hard work, there appears to be a small group in our community looking to undermine the efforts of this committee, our district leaders, our teachers, and support personnel out of frustration, uncertainty, and in a few cases out of vengeance for personal gain or because of grudges. This type of action is just disdainful to our educators and leaders who have worked under unprecedented conditions to keep this district moving forward. We empathize with the struggle of each family. Collectively, we have 10 children in this district, but unlike other families in this community, the 5 of us are responsible for the health and safety of the nearly 2,800 students and staff members. We ask that you just take a moment to step back, assess your comments and actions as they relate to how the past year has transpired within the country. We know Lynnfield is better than this, and we are better than this. Disappointment, frustration, anxiety are acceptable emotions, but striking out because of a personal or professional disappointment serves no purpose in educating our students. No one person's situation is any more or less important than another. As a community, we must look for a common good while recognizing and supporting those who are struggling. For the first time in almost a year, there is a definite light at the end of this tunnel. We cannot tell you exactly when we will get there, but we will come out of this darkness as a community and in a way that will make us stronger. As I said earlier, if any community member has concerns about decisions that have been made based on the data that was available at the time, please become informed by picking up the phone and asking questions in a respectful manner with the understanding that you may not agree with the answers, which in turn does not give you permission to question the integrity or intentions of our teachers, administrators, superintendent, or school committee. It does give you permission to disagree and not be happy about the decisions. But if you want to use town resources to fuel your theories because you're uninformed, tired of COVID, and only starting to pay attention after 11 months, please stop. None of us like COVID. Hopefully, I will not have to continue to clarify misinformation and call out some of the blatant lies at future school committee meetings, but I am prepared to do so if necessary. So now let's get back to business. We have a policy review. Stacy, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. So I'm honored to serve as a member of the school committee's policy subcommittee, along with Superintendent Vogel and Mr. Schoberg. We recently reviewed 2 policies that had been updated by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. After reviewing these, I found myself compelled to reflect on the existing superintendent and school committees operating protocols and many policies that define and describe our roles. In a quote unquote normal year, we would have reviewed and discussed these at length at the start of the school year. So I wanted us to take some time this evening to go back to the basics and reflect on them again together. We have already previously agreed to these, but due to the nature of this year, we really haven't had the opportunity to reflect and discuss together. As elected members of the Lynnfield School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that students of the district receive the best education possible. In accepting this role, we hold the pursuit of that goal as our sacred duty. To that end, we commit to the following, among many others, in the conduct of our business. We will support the educational welfare and well-being of all students, establish a vision, create policies, and assure accountability to sustain continuous improvement in teaching and learning, leaving the day-to-day operations to the superintendent and staff. We will represent the needs, interests, and achievement of all students in the district and place these above all else in the decisions we make. Demonstrate professional and collegial relations with one another. We will maintain trust and mutual respect between and among school committee members, the superintendent, and the administration by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement. We will base our decisions on the available facts, vote our convictions, avoid bias, and uphold and support the decisions of the majority of the school committee once a decision is made. We will agree that our positions will not be used for personal or partisan gain. We will acknowledge that a school committee meeting is a business meeting that is held in public, not a public meeting. Respect the leadership roles of the school committee chair and superintendent. We'll dedicate ourselves to establishing and maintaining effective communication, referring constituent concerns and complaints to the appropriate person within the district chain of command or chain of communication. We'll work collaboratively with our town officials to improve our schools and actively seek ways to enlist their support for our efforts. And again, these are just a few of our items that are listed in our protocols and in our descriptions in terms of roles and responsibilities. But I would just kind of open it up if anyone has any comments or thoughts. Okay.
Stacy, I would just say, this was, especially after everything that's gone on over the last year, I think especially it's important to not lose sight of the fact that we are a committee that holds meetings in public, not holds public meetings. I think in an effort to keep people informed, frankly, we have blurred that line at times. So, I appreciate you grounding us back in that.
Thank you. So if there aren't any other comments on that, I'll move on to
Stacy, Rich,
I apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. So I just wanted to say, I said, we had a great meeting last week in the policy subcommittee, and I just want to thank you for reading that for us today for the work we did that day.
Sure. Oh yeah, I have more. Policy is a bit dry and lengthy, but but we have to do it, right? Before we get to some of the specific policies, I also wanted to reiterate that in September, the school committee approved a policy on COVID-related issues. And at a high level, some of the excerpts from that policy include that the school committee will take note of the COVID-19 emergency, resulting disruption of the traditional school day and year, growing concerns of students, families, and the community, and the growing number of issues that will affect public education. The school committee established an emergency interim policy to promote public safety and safety of students and faculty, maintain to the extent possible the high level and efficient level of educational services, ensure support for students in general and in particular for those at the highest educational as well as socio and economic risk, comply with the emergency orders of the governor and adhere to the extent possible to the guidance of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and other agencies of state and federal government, and expedite the safest strategy for returning students to school. The school committee authorized the superintendent to act expeditiously in executing the back to school plan in accordance with the current law and regulation, and will, where noted, authorize the superintendent to suspend, revise, or recommend policies, rules, and protocols as needed to serve the best interests and safety of students, their families, and the community. This committee takes these roles and policies seriously. We recognize that the back to school plan is continually changing and that the superintendent, administrative leadership team, and all of the Lynnfield public school educators are working extremely hard with the data available to make well-informed and well-intentioned decisions for our students, families, and staff and community. After many months of poor public health metrics with high COVID rates in the schools and in the community that did not allow for changes to the initial back to school model, we're now headed into what appears to be a much better direction. This policy and others related to it should provide the superintendent with the authority to make timely decisions going forward. And, as Jamie mentioned, DESE has come out with some possible and proposed changes. But I just, with that, Kristen, I think, just revisiting this, wanted to ensure that, you have everything that you need in order to move forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, sure. All right, now switching gears to discuss the two policies that we are actually recommending for approval tonight. The policy subcommittee is proud to present a new educational equity policy for review and approval. At the February 2nd school committee meeting, Superintendent Vogel provided an update as to the creation of the Lynnfield Public Schools Equity and Diversity Committee, and the educational equity policy aligns perfectly with that wonderful work being done by this committee. Okay, and I'll read that policy in full if you would like. Okay. So it's file JBB, Educational Equity. The school committee's goal is to strive to address the needs of every student in each of our schools, subject to budgetary, space, and other limitations. Educational equity for the purpose of this policy is defined as providing all students, as reasonably practical, the high quality instruction and support they need to reach and exceed a common standard. To achieve educational equity, the district will commit to 1, systematically, when appropriate, use district-wide and individual school level data, disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, gender identity, national origin, language, special education, socioeconomic status, and mobility to inform district decision-making. Raise the achievement of all students. Graduate all students ready to succeed in a diverse, local, national, and global community. In order to reach the goal of educational equity as reasonably practical for each and every student, the district shall provide every student with access to high-quality curriculum, support, and other educational resources. Seek to promote educational equity as a priority in professional development. Endeavor to create schools with a welcoming and inclusive culture and environment. Provide multiple pathways to success in order to meet the needs of the diverse student body and actively encourage, support, and expect high academic achievement for each student. The superintendent shall include equity practices in the district's strategic plan and goal strategies to implement this policy. The superintendent, upon request, will periodically report to the committee the progress of the implementation of this policy. So I don't know if anyone has any.
Can I just ask a quick question? So, Kristen, you touched upon this at the last meeting about what work has been started in the district. And obviously this is very, very important work. And it's also work which requires a lot of moving parts and a lot of different people. Could you give us a kind of brief update on where the district is with this equity work right now, please?
Yes, absolutely. So you might recall when I did my superintendent goals, I did have a goal around equity. And at that time, let you all know that all of the district administrators as well have a goal around equity. So we have already begun right from the very beginning of the year with a real focus on the equity work. And as I said 3 weeks ago in the February 2nd meeting, that the Equity and Diversity Committee has been formed. It's close to 31 people, including stakeholders from parents, students, teachers, and administrators. That group has been broken into 3 subcommittees looking at students, systemic, and curriculum issues. So those 3 subcommittees are continuing to meet over the next few months to do their individual focus work. What I can tell you from a more of a systemic work view around equity, I am actually meeting on Thursday morning with 7 other superintendents to explore the idea of a shared director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it would be one position that would be shared amongst 7 districts. So that's really exciting to be exploring that opportunity for us to have access to a director of DEI. I also applied about maybe 6 weeks ago. I applied for a grant through Metco headquarters for a 12-week anti-racism program for up to 20 educators. It was a $5,000 grant. We were awarded that grant. We just found out 2 weeks ago that we were awarded that grant. And we now will be providing anti-racism education for up to 20 educators starting hopefully in March and running all the way through June. And then Kevin, I'll let Kevin speak to this, but Kevin and I are interviewing a consultant, an equity consultant. Kevin's been doing a lot of research with different consultants to find one that's a really good fit for Lynnfield for our educators. And we will be looking to move toward hiring this person to work with us very closely for at least the next year. So Kevin, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, thank you, Kristen. I mean, all this work is certainly a multi-pronged approach. One thing that we've been able to pick up on is just the work from a cultural proficiency standpoint. We've had several offerings to our educators over the last couple of years. And, that work is an opportunity for educators to, get their feet a little bit wet in terms of an awareness and, what that means, both in the classroom and in the community, looking inside before you look outside. And that there's another offering happening next week for our educators around cultural proficiency. And that's, we're grateful that's through mass partnerships for youth, thanks to a healthy Lynnfield. So that's, one component. And as you know, I've mentioned the striving for equity course that is ongoing for our educators. And this is our second cohort that is now underway. Kristen and I are actually both in the course. It's a 10+ hour course, and this is not a check in the box. This is meaningful work around timely and pertinent issues, and the opportunity to collaborate with educators in the district with a good amount of independent work, but also ample opportunity for collaboration. So that work is happening. What Kristen is referring to with some of the grants and the consultancy work is this is long-term, and that those conversations have been happening behind the scenes almost on a daily basis. Kristen's right. I interviewed several consultants over the past few weeks. I really felt the need to bring the team to the table later this week with this particular consultant that we want to do a follow-up with, because I think it's someone that I feel really good about based on the research that I've done and in the reviews in the field. So we're hopeful. I think that to take that initial long-term step in April as part of our professional development plan. And I just want to say, like, this work, it's been ongoing. It's critical to our educators. They're all passionate about learning. They recognize the need to learn, the common vocabulary. Also just, what it means, what it means, cultural equity, and why. Bottom line is everyone wants our students to be comfortable in the classroom. So, but with that being said, it's a pandemic, and our educators are, how hard they're working, and it's just, we're getting it in. It's just, we're getting in a little bit differently. And when we're back to normal, you're going to really, you really see some headway here and some real momentum. So the roots are being strengthened, and we're just getting started on what we're excited about in terms of a long journey here. And then connecting the dots with the community, and working closely with Peg Saladay and a healthy Lynnfield. I mean, I can't say enough about that partnership, and let's not forget all the offerings that we've been, Kristen and I know we've been fortunate to attend some of the recent offerings, but those are ongoing as well. And, the speakers and professional development and those opportunities for our community members to come together and discuss these issues as well. So we'll get there. Work in progress.
Thank you so much for the update. I speak for myself, but I think with the other committee members, this really is the most important work we can do at the moment in this district, and to be quite honest, in this country. And the kind of having anti-racism education being part of the fabric of everything is so vitally important. And I think the last year has brought that very, alarmingly into focus as well. So I commend everybody for your hard work on this and all the planning behind the scenes, because as with everything, this all takes a lot of planning and a lot of hard work. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil. And I'll just add this intersection of the work that we're already doing. You look at social emotional learning, and you look at the curriculum work we're doing. This is just an intersection of that work, and I want this to go hand in hand as we continue to write curriculum. So it's not, that's the way it needs to be done, right? It needs to be, when we rolled out social emotional learning, we talked about that intersection and that integration that had to happen, and we're going to have that same approach here with the equity lens. Equity lens will be critical.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for asking.
Rich?
Yeah, so I just want to remind everybody, we did have a policy in place, JB, equal educational opportunities. But after hearing about the work of the diversity group, and to make sure that they have the strength and foundation to do what they're going to need to do to get us where we need to be, we felt it was important to get together and have that meeting and get this additional educational opportunity policy in place. So I was happy to do it, happy to get that done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Kristen and Kevin, for the background as well. So I don't know, would you like me to read the next policy, Jamie, or would we like to vote on this one first? I don't know how.
So I think we will vote on this at the next meeting.
Okay,
We'll vote to enact these at the next meeting. It was not on, the vote itself was not on the agenda.
okay, great. Then I'll just briefly move on to the public comment at school committee meetings policy. And so as previously stated, school committee meeting is a business meeting held in public, not a public meeting. So with this particular policy, we've just made some updates to an existing policy, really to ensure that we're more in line with other Lynnfield boards, commissions, even town meeting protocols. But then in particular, again, as Rich mentioned, we got some updates from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. So these changes, really just some new and some revised sections to what is our already existing policy. If it's okay with the committee, what I'll do is just read the items that are either revised or new, as opposed to reading the entire policy. Okay. So public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. To ensure the ability of the school committee to conduct the district's business in an orderly manner, the following rules and procedures are adopted. Members of the public wishing to address the committee are expected to follow these guidelines. At the start of each regularly scheduled school committee meeting, individuals will sign in for an opportunity to speak during public comment. The public comment segment shall not exceed 15 minutes. All speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner. The chair will recognize those wishing to speak and give them the floor. Only persons recognized by the chair may speak. For purposes of the minutes, speakers should identify themselves at the beginning of their remarks. The purpose of public comment is to receive input from the community, not to engage in conversation with the committee. The chair will ensure that any comment or question that requires a response from the committee or school department will be addressed in a timely manner. Speakers will be allowed up to 3 minutes to present their material and must begin their comments by stating their name and address. The presiding chair may permit extension of this time limit in extenuating circumstances. Topics for discussion should be limited to those within the school committee's scope of authority. The authority of the school committee primarily concerns the review and approval of the budget of the district's public schools, the performance of the superintendent, and the educational goals and policies of the district's public schools. Comments and complaints regarding school personnel, apart from the superintendent or students, are generally prohibited unless those comments and complaints concern matters within the scope of the school committee authority. The chair of the meeting, after a warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats that are likely to provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of the peace or incitement to imminent lawless conduct or contains obscenities. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. All remarks will be addressed through the chair of the meeting. Comments made during the public comment portion of the meeting do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Lynnfield School Committee. Sign-up instructions will be provided for those who wish to participate in public comment. And that, again, that's policy BEDH, which we have within our current policies, but just a few kind of really some additional items and revisions or updates.
Thank you, Stacy. Just one request before we vote on that next week. If we can just find how districts are adapting this with COVID and remote meetings. I know many of these policies were written, things like sign-in sheets and such. So I just want to make sure as we adopt this, we're also having some the interim steps necessary for these current meetings.
Sure. Yep. Happy to do so. And then just, I know you said we'll vote next week, but just briefly, the policy subcommittee, we typically would meet over the summer, but just with COVID, obviously that didn't occur. There were other items that took precedence. So we will meet over the summer for a full policy review. And then I think probably closer to the start of the next school year, we'll come back with, any other updates that are required.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Kristen and Rich as well.
Any questions? I think we just lost Rich. All right. Kristen, over to you.
All right. Great. Thank you. For the superintendent's update, we have quite a bit of information this evening. So I will just go through it all, and of course we'll end with our college acceptances. Let's start with the most recent event that is impending, which is the alternating Wednesdays for in-person, starting with cohort C, which will be tomorrow morning. And we're very much looking forward to adding some more in-person for our students, starting with cohort C, which is the gold cohort. And then next week it will be the B cohort, or the blue cohort. And I just want to make sure that everyone is clear that students who are home on the Wednesdays when they're alternating, that you will log into Zoom just like you do any other Wednesday morning, right? So it does not matter which grade level you are, you will log into Zoom just like you would any other Wednesday morning when you are home. So there may have been some confusion about that, but I just want to make sure that that's really clear for people, that it's just like any other Wednesday when you're home, you will log into Zoom and follow, what's happening with the lesson and your teacher, et cetera. So next we have March 1st will be our kindergartners coming in for 4.5 days. So they'll be in for 4 full days and then a half day on Wednesday mornings. And we are so looking forward to having all of our littlest learners back in our buildings and in our classrooms. I know that one thing that we have had to balance here, and both Jamie and Stacy had spoke to this earlier, and that is that the public health metrics and the capacity of our kindergartners to manage the masking, the social distancing, the hand washing, the sanitizing, the protocols around the lunchroom, all of those had to be learned. And we also had to explore, making sure that we support and have equal access for all of our students. So that includes our cohort D students. So we needed to make sure that we had hired a remote learning kindergarten teacher just to support any of our kindergarten students whose families felt that they still needed to be remote as we moved to this model. So once we had all of those in place, right, and this goes back many, many weeks. In fact, back to the beginning of the year, we were talking about how to do this with our kindergartners, right? And at that point, we did not feel, they hadn't done school yet. We didn't know how they would be in terms of, keeping their masks on, washing their hands, staying 6 feet apart. And they have mastered that and learned that so amazingly well, right? And then we were in a position where our public health metrics were not in a good spot, right? And we weren't able to make that shift in November, and even in December when we had looked at doing it again in December, we were unable to make that shift, right? And that it wasn't until mid-January that the public health metrics began to improve. And from that point on, we began to look at, okay, our learners they're in a better place as kindergartners, right? They have all of the protocols down, right? They've got the routines. We hired a remote learning teacher just for our kindergarten students, right? And we were able to make the decision that we could roll in and bring in our kindergartners for 4 full days and a half day on Wednesday, starting on March 1st. So that's how we got to where we are with the March 1st. So we are super excited. We can't wait to see them. So we're looking forward to next Monday. With that,
Okay.
yeah, yes,
I have a question.
yeah,
For parents who've had a child in kindergarten before, I don't think the classroom setup is not going to be familiar at all, right? So the classroom setup for kindergarten, I think everybody in this committee will qualify for this. It's like when we were kids, you're back in rows
yes,
and you're separated
yes,
significantly. So you can
yes.
just talk a little bit about the layout of the classroom so parents understand like there's not going to be the opportunity to commingle as much because they're going to be
Correct.
segregated in their own chair.
Yeah,
in their own desk.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, you're correct, right. So traditionally we had moved away from, having individual desks in kindergarten classrooms and moved to tables, right? Whether it's horseshoe tables, rainbow tables, trapezoidal tables, right? So that the students could, work with each other, collaborate with each other. And now in order to maintain the social distancing of 6 feet in the classrooms, we had to move to individual desks or a child individually at a table. So it may be a combination of one child at a table and then individual desks scattered through. But they are very much linear in rows, from the front of the classroom to the back of the classroom. So it does look very different. There aren't rainbow tables in the classrooms anymore. Most of the classrooms for doing any type of work in that nature. I do know that the kindergarten teachers are going to try to, when they can, work with students using dividers and being, further apart at a table when they can to do individual work with students in a safe way. They're going to try to make that work. But you're right, it will look very different than it has in the past.
And then in regard to lunch, that will look dramatically different as well, right? Just because
Correct.
we can't fit everybody in the lunchroom safely.
6 feet apart, right. So we're able to fit 3. And Tony, correct me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's 3 kindergarten classrooms can eat in the lunchroom at once. And then 1 classroom eats in the classroom, which they can do safely at 6 feet because they are 6 feet. And that we will rotate the classroom that stays to eat so that it's not the same classroom constantly who always has to be in their own classroom to eat, that they all get an opportunity to be into the APR. So that's how we're able to do the lunch for the kindergartners. So most of them will be in the APR, and then 1 classroom will have to stay, and we'll rotate that through.
Yeah. And then in terms of dismissal, et cetera, the principals will be communicating to the parents how that's going to be
Correct.
done, because that will look a lot different as well in regard to social distancing.
Correct. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
So as always, we just ask the parents to be patient because we got to
Yep.
work out the logistics. It's a lot of trial and error.
Correct.
Yep. Thank you.
Correct. Sure thing.
Kristen, the other element of this was additional CARES Act money that came in, which allowed us to actually identify smaller desks that we could get. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. So we do have to purchase. Have purchased some additional desks, right? Some smaller desks to put into the kindergarten classrooms. They were delayed by a week because of the ice storm across the country. So we're hoping that they're delivered this week, hopefully on Thursday, and will be put together pretty quickly for Monday. So yes, we did.
Thank you in advance to John Tomaz and his team for that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right, so then we'll move on to the next item I have in my update, which would be that we have been, as I just spoke to with, we're working on our kindergartners, getting them in, and then our next groups were our 1st and 2nd graders. So we've been working to bring in our 1st and 2nd graders next to be full in person at 6 feet of distancing in the classroom. And we're actively working with our teachers on the plan to bring them back. We're looking to implement this plan sometime in March. We still have a number of logistics that need to be worked out. We need to, first we'll be sending something home to the Dr. Dwyer and Mrs. Weiland will send something home to families of first and second graders next week, asking them to make a commitment to whether they'll be full in person or whether they'll be hybrid. And that's really important information for us so that we can take the next step in the planning, which is determining, do we need to purchase more additional desks at all? Do we need to move desks from storage back into classrooms? It also helps us with figuring out lunches, right? A number of classrooms that can go into the APR, the number of classrooms that need to stay in the classes, figuring out coverage within those classrooms for lunch, pick up and drop off. We also are looking to, we have to hire remote only teachers once again for our first and second graders so that we provide equal access for our cohort D families. So there's a number of details that we're in the process of working on right now. And as soon as we have everything in place, Dr. Dwyer and Mrs. Weiland will communicate with the families exactly the timeline for when it will start. And we will most likely do a phased where we'll start with one grade and then roll in the next grade the following week. So, families of first and second graders should keep an eye open for information to come directly from Dr. Dwyer and Mrs. Weiland next week with the next steps. Any
Kristen,
questions on that?
yeah,
Yep.
just to clarify, you said that parents would have to choose between in-person and hybrid. I think you meant in-person.
I meant, yeah, sorry. I meant
I
in person.
I don't want there to be any confusion.
Yes, correct. Yep. Any other questions on that
Stacy?
before we move on? Yes.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So for the first and second graders, they will also continue to be at 6 feet. Is that okay?
Correct. Yes.
And those classrooms similar to kindergarten or a little larger and or maybe have fewer students in them? Is that?
Yeah, so it varies. So some of them are smaller in number, right? They're actually smaller than some of the kindergarten classrooms. Some of them are also fairly good sized classrooms as well. So there's some variability. We do have to do some, there'll be some adjusting. Like we said in the kindergarten classrooms, there's sometimes, in classrooms, they put desks together to make little pods. It's not going to be that. It's going to be by rows, very, very set up. Desks can't be moving around, etc. So, so it will look different than it has looked before, I think, in a first and second grade classroom. But we feel very strongly that this is something that has to happen. We really need to get our kindergarten, first and second graders back in to 4.5 days.
Thank you.
Tim?
Kristen, you kind of hinted at a timeline that you thought perhaps March would be something for first and second grade. Is it safe to say, I think we've all experienced this in talking with the LTA yesterday, everything remains very fluid. So I think we all acknowledge that we're heading out of the tunnel, but to get to where we all want to be, which is back to normal as close as we can, it's very fluid, and it's based on information. It's based on what Tony sees. It's based on material, what we have. So I think we just have to, caution parents that we're heading there. It might be a snail's pace at some points, and it might be a sprint at another point.
Correct.
But we'll get there, and we just ask them to be patient. And that's going to go across the district as well, right? So as we look at the elementaries and, the upper grades introduce a whole host of problems because they're not segregated in one classroom. They're moving around the building. So that's a logistical issue that we got to try to figure out. So just for the older parents out there, or the parents with older children, they need to understand that the middle school and high school have a different set of issues presented to us because their children are moving every 45 minutes in some case throughout the building.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
And we do have, even starting in, fourth grade and up, we have, much larger class sizes. So as the grades go up, the class sizes do get larger, and that makes it more challenging, as well as to what you just spoke to, Tim, which is that, in the upper levels of middle school as well as, and then also in high school, you're looking at basically individual schedules for students. So, when you're looking at the high school, you're looking at 600 individual schedules. So it's very difficult to, say look at this one particular classroom and say we can fit this many kids, but there may be so many different iterations of numbers of kids who come through that room at any given time. So it makes it much more challenging. And we have looked at all of it. We have tried, right? We have looked at explored every single grade level. I know that, the Commissioner Riley did a press conference with the governor this afternoon, and he is planning to take to the Board of Education next month a proposal to remove remote and hybrid as options to qualify for time on learning in Massachusetts. So last spring, he had gone to the board and they gave him permission to include remote learning as a way to meet time on learning for our students in Massachusetts at the beginning of the pandemic, and then as well as a summer to include remote and hybrid. So he is proposing going to them next month and asking them to remove that and to push forward a phased-in plan to bring in all elementary students by, I've seen two different accounts. I've seen by April, I've seen in April. I think tomorrow we will hopefully get that more details on that when we have a call with the commissioner to understand exactly what that means. And then the phased in part is after elementary, then it would be middle school and high school. And we don't know what the phased in timing is, what he's proposing. So, we'll all be learning more as this moves along, but this does move this process quickly. So Tim, as you're talking about, sometimes it's like a snail's pace and other times it might come fast and furious. So, if we look at it, April 1st is, it's 1 month away, right? So we are, for Lynnfield, we have started this process, right? We are already, right, moving in this direction of bringing our elementary students back. So I feel like we're a little bit ahead of the game here, and in a good spot. So stay tuned. I hopefully we'll be learning some more in the next. Certainly, we'll know. I think we'll learn more tomorrow, perhaps. But certainly in the next couple of weeks, I think we'll probably be learning more details about this going forward.
Yeah, just a couple of things that jumped to my mind when I saw this. One is, and it is unique to Lynnfield, is what are we defining as elementary? Is it K through 5?
Correct.
Because that's a different model and would require different needs here.
Yeah.
And this may be more of a question for Tony, but there's still the reality that the fastest path to getting our kids back is teachers getting vaccinated. And where are we in that process? I know, are teachers in the next group, and do we have an idea of when the timing would be? I was hopeful that with the announcement with the governor there today, they were going to announce that, but they did not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was hoping the same thing. I thought when the commissioner came on and the governor and they gave their speech to this afternoon that they would, with this push, to get kids back in by April, that they would also push teachers up, on that priority list too. But they did not. With that being said, I think the way that the state has kind of been going about this over the last month is almost like every 2 weeks, they've been moving forward with another notch in their phase. So if that's the case, and that's how that path continues, they started last Thursday with opening up, the most recent phase of the 65. And I think that another 2 weeks, hopefully, maybe we'll be at our teachers, at that point for them. So that can move very quickly too. But with that in mind, the process is in itself is slow, right? It takes time to get appointments. People are having difficulties doing that. So that process in itself, where we don't have control of that, from our district and from, the town, we're going to have to, the teachers are going to be kind of on their own, likely to have to do that. So that process in itself is not like you say, X date, every teacher's going to get their first shot, and we're going to be, 6 weeks from them being fully, covered. So that's going to be a process too. But hopefully, if it's that 2-week time frame, we will be there soon. It could be a couple of weeks that starts.
Mhm.
That's great. We've talked about this as a path, and it is one of the things that we are going to have to figure out. But I also, and now that the distribution of vaccines is changing, it's going to create a whole new set of issues, especially when it comes to timing and when teachers become eligible and when they can go to get their vaccines. I just want to make everyone aware of the fact. Stacy, you had read some of the protocols that we have as a committee, one of which is to work collaboratively with town officials to improve our schools and actively seek ways to enlist their support in our efforts. With that in mind, and knowing that this was a little bit out of our control, I reached out to the chair of the select board a couple weeks ago on a Wednesday, asked if we could or I could attend the next select board meeting to talk about, give them an update on where we are, and more importantly, see if there was a way to partner with them to help expedite teacher vaccines once they became eligible. And that request was denied. So, we're going to have to figure this one out on our own and continue to find ways to get our educators vaccinated as quickly as possible.
So, one thing, Jamie, I know that we've all been asked this question by many parents in the community is how can they help, right? And I think that as teachers become eligible to be vaccinated, we're going to want them to be able to take the first available that they can get, right? And so, as you've heard us talking about many times this year, and this is not unique to Lynnfield, this is a national issue, is the lack of substitute teachers, right? So we do not have substitutes to cover for teachers if they need to go and get their vaccine, because they could only get it on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? And we want them to be able to do that. So one way where parents could be helpful is filling out our Corey form and getting fingerprinted and getting that information to my office, and we can start creating a list of volunteers, of people who can come in once they are Coreyed and fingerprinted. And it may be only covering a class for a couple hours so that a teacher can go off and get it done and come back, or it may be for a day, depending on the situation. So certainly all of those forms and that information is available on our website under the Human Resources tab. You can find the Corey form as well as information on how to go about getting fingerprinted. And both fingerprinting and the Corey form needs to comes to my office, and we actually send the Corey form out from my office once it has been filled out.
And this is something we've talked to the LTA about. They were excited about this as well. And
correct.
Basically, it's creating a pool. So if we have 50 parents who have been Coreyed and fingerprinted, and 50 teachers can get vaccinated on a day, we can cover those classes, and it's just going to help us help the teachers get through their vaccines faster, and subsequently get our students back to back to school faster.
Correct.
Oh, sorry, can I just ask Tony a quick question? So I know that a few weeks back there was the vaccination clinic for residents who are over 75, which I believe the town did organize. Are vaccination clinics like that off the table now because of the way the state's doing stuff? I'm just interested.
Sure. Yeah. So the state recently made a comment last week saying that they were going to actually stop distributing vaccine supplies to local boards of health to let us do these clinics. They are really pushing the mass vaccination sites as a way to get this done. I mean, I definitely personally think there's benefit to that, but I think any public health official would tell you that, you know, having local boards of health be able to have a hand in that and keeping it, you know, to an extent within the community definitely makes access much easier, especially when we're talking about the older plus population of 75 plus. And I think particularly too with the teachers, I would love to be able to do that. So we're all on the same page. It's easy for the teachers. They know when they're coming. They don't need to worry about getting an appointment, having that appointment be weeks out. You know, they're all in the same time frame of that 6 weeks. And, you know, that's an ideal world, right? And what we had hoped for, and even hoped that if we had supply maybe coming to us locally, to our local board of health, that when the teachers were eligible, that we would potentially be able to, you know, to offer that. At this point, I hate to say anything is ever off the table because things are forever changing, you know, so I am still holding out hope that some way there will be a miracle and I will be sent all the vaccines I need to put in the arms of all of the teachers that we have, you know, in town. Nothing would make me and the nurses in this town happier. So, you know, Kristen and I talk about this all the time. We are ready and able to do that with the emergency management team if that ever becomes an option for us. So nothing is off the table.
So with that in mind, should members of the community petition the governor and local representatives and stuff like that? So to try and speed things up, because it seems disingenuous to say, okay, everything's going to go back to normal, but teachers aren't getting moved up the list.
100%. If there was any effort that I think parents or local government can do, it is to push to get the teachers vaccinated and to let the school districts have a hand in that themselves. It is definitely the most efficient way to get it done. I know supply is an issue as well too across the board, across the country, right? It's not just a Massachusetts issue, but I'm very hopeful that, you know, as we move on here, that the supply will increase. And hopefully that will free up more vaccines to be given to local communities to do some of these things. Johnson & Johnson is very close to getting approval. That's a one-shot vaccine, very easily handled, doesn't require the cold, you know, storage that the other two vaccines do, particularly Pfizer. So it just would make the process much, much easier. And obviously, you know, you have another vaccine in the supply chain. So obviously, you know, it increases the volume that's available. So hopefully we'll see that too, you know, so again, this is forever changing. So hopefully we'll be in a different place, you know, in a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Phil, just, I don't know the details of it, but I did see an email that came through right before this meeting that there's a group of 50 legislators in Massachusetts who sent a letter to the governor urging them to consider the local distribution.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. All right, a few more updates. First update, we're going to be making an update to our current travel policy that we have in Lynnfield. So effective on March 5th, we will no longer require families or staff to test 5 days after return from an out-of-state travel. So this would have it revert to the Massachusetts travel policy. So we would still require that our families and our staff follow the Massachusetts travel policy and take a test and provide us with a negative test before returning to school or to work. However, they no longer would need to wait the 5 days. So we felt that based on our public health metrics and the way that they have been trending, that we felt that this was something that we could safely make a change to, and worked in conversations with our task force in agreement that this was something that we could move forward with. So we'll make an update to that. I will send out, just so families know, this is a lot of information, and we will put it all together, and I will send out a communication on Friday that will have all this information in it. So if, with dates, so people don't have to remember the dates, but I will put the dates in, and it's when the updated travel policy becomes effective. Any questions on that?
Nope. Rich?
All right. Yes, Rich.
Yep. Sure. Just before you jump on to the next item,
Yes.
We had spoken about it during our policy meeting, but I just wanted to ask if once students started attending school back in full time, could we hear from the counselors at each of the levels to see how they are doing?
Yep.
We all know the kids are doing well with the 2 days a week, and I just concerned if it bumps up to 4.5, 5 days a week, that
Yep.
it may change. It may change a little, and I'm certainly convinced we're prepared for it. I would just like to hear.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Definitely. Just made myself a note. All right. Another update would be our, as you know, we have the 30-day remote policy where we were asking, starting back in I think it was end of December, that parents would need to, if they pulled their child to go remote, that they would need to stay remote for 30 days, right? And we had said that this was best for teaching and learning in terms of the continuity of it, both for teachers and for students. We are going to, effective March 19th, we will no longer have that 30-day commitment for our remote learners. So we feel that we're moving in the direction that we're moving with public health metrics, as well as what's happening with DESE regulations, that we are going to move away from the 30-day commitment for remote, effective on March 19th. So I will also include that in my communication on Friday for parents.
And let me just say, I mean, we got up here, we've been at these meetings for, especially in November and December, talking about bad health metrics and do the right thing and mask up, and and this is the opposite message. This is a reflection of commitment and families doing the right things, and incrementally more mask wearing and social distancing, and now the metrics are headed in the right direction, so we can roll this back. So that, just like it takes a community to go one direction, it definitely takes a community to go in the direction we're headed. So thank you to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we would not be, right, if it wasn't for the commitment of the community, right, to do this, we would not have seen for the last 6 weeks, right, the decline in the number of cases, both in the schools and the community. And it's really wonderful, right? And we had talked many weeks ago about sacrifices, right? And I know that so many in our community have made many, many sacrifices so that we can be talking about, what we're talking about today, about more kids coming to school, making changes to the policies that we have. So it's all really good. It's all really good.
Good.
All right. And my before we get to college acceptances, my last is a reflection of the update to the transportation guidance that came out the Friday before February vacation from DESE. And with that, I'm asking if the committee would consider reverting back to our bus policy of 1 mile for elementary, 1.5 for middle school, and 2 miles at high school, so that we safely can put more children on the buses. And we know that this would be a tremendous support and help for our families, particularly as we start to have kindergarten, first grade, and second graders coming back to school for 4.5 days. So I'm asking if that's something that the committee would consider doing.
Yeah, I think we would. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone. My initial reaction is, I would want to, yes, but I would want to see the plan in terms of how it's going to impact routes, how it's going to impact it's going to impact students and you know, what it would look like for the rest of this year and going into next year. So I think it's something that we should have a broader discussion on and answer those questions at the next meeting and plan on voting one way or the other at the next meeting.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone else has an opinion, if there's other information. Phil.
Yeah, I think that it's something that needs to be looked into closely, because some of those DESI guidelines for the buses were a little bit on the crazy side, particularly with you can sit next to somebody on the bus, but you have to stand apart when you're waiting for the bus. And then if it's raining, you know, the district needs to open the windows and provide ponchos. There was some slightly out of left field things there, but I think generally it seems to be a good idea. But I think there are some parts of that DESI guidance which just seemed kind of out of bizarro world.
Wait, who do you want to go?
Tim, then Rich.
Oh, just following up on Phil and yours, Jamie. I think, Kristen, how soon do you need to know whether we're going to go back to those routes, like ASAP, or I just think there needs to be a more robust discussion, because as Phil said, those guidelines are like wackadoo guidelines, which is consistent with what DESI gives us. So I think we got to sift through those and then do an evaluation on our side too, to see how that impacts us.
Yeah, I have Sheila is looking at the pulling together the routes for me, so we can take a look at you know, what we would basically go back to the routes that we had last year, right? What those routes were, and then what I do know is that we did not decrease the number of buses that we had been running, because to keep the numbers down, we ran just as many buses, so it would not require us increasing number of buses. But certainly, you know, looking at the what she has for the routes and what she projects for the number of kids on those buses based on those routes, I think would be important information that we can get.
So I would say two things to that point. One is our next meeting is March 9th, so it's 2 weeks. So assuming we discuss it and make approvals on that, we can, we could start the next day if we needed to.
Okay.
I think the other thing, I've heard this question a lot, and especially with COVID and everything, is there a policy, or is there a opportunity where if parents wanted to opt out of the bus and they're eligible, that they could sign a waiver to do so? Because I think it would impact routes, it would impact timing, it would impact capacity.
Yeah, I don't know if there is, but we could certainly look at that.
Yeah, if we can just, it's just something that if we can look at it and have it for the next meeting, I think it's, I don't want to leave any stone unturned for that one.
Yep.
Rich, I think I interrupted you.
No, actually, my question's been answered. I was going to ask if you had the conversation yet with Sheila of how it affected the numbers of students we would be able to get on the buses and still stay within the new policy.
Yep. Yep.
Any other questions about buses? Before we go to colleges, just one request ahead of our next meeting. Things are going to move really, really quickly, and as Stacy outlined earlier, Superintendent is, Kristen, you're authorized to take action without having to get us all together. Obviously, please contact us before any announcements are made. But one thing that is a little bit, I'm a little bit concerned about, and if you can just do a little bit of research ahead of this, knowing that there's just going to be a lot of messaging out there. There was a lot of inconsistency with the Wednesday messaging. We heard it from parents. There was, in my mind, it should have been a really easy message of, if you're home on Wednesday, nothing changes from what you've experienced on Wednesdays up till now. So if you can just do a little bit of research and dig a little bit deeper, and with the principals, see where communications may have been crossed and lines may have been crossed, and make sure everyone is aligned as we move into some of these fast decisions that are going to be happening.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed. Definitely. Ready for colleges?
Yes. Geography.
Geography. Here it comes. We have Coastal Carolina, Clark University, University of Maine at Orono, Merrimack College, Bridgewater State University, George Mason University, Temple University, University of Maryland, Hawaii Pacific University, Simmons College, Sacred Heart University, Westfield State University, College of Charleston, St. Anselm's, SNHU, UMass Dartmouth, Villanova, Chapman College. Anyone know where Chapman College is?
Orange County, California.
Yes! 100% right.
I used to have a client right next door.
It's a private research university in Orange County, California. Emerson College, Loyola, Los Angeles, Ithaca College, Elon, University of Redlands, Salem State, Fisher College, LaSalle College, and Rochester Institute of Technology. So congratulations to all of those students. It's a tremendous list of colleges. Really great.
That's fantastic. And just before we go, one other question: any reports after 2 days of fall 2 in spring, winter sports practices?
I heard that the football field was melted. Right, we got a cloud. There was some strategic placing of barrels on some snow that created melting, which were then removed and then helped with a little bit of shoveling, a little bit of rain, and there was turf. So there's a lot of interest in some fall sports activities, it's really great. So really excited for the kids to have this opportunity.
Yeah, and just really appreciative of the students for doing such a good job following these protocols, and making sure that we can continue to do this. So
yeah, exactly. Yep. I think the football team it's maybe a 6-game schedule. They're looking to play, I think, 3 home, 3 away. Yeah, it's great.
Stacy?
Thank you. Yeah, so just in terms of the protocols, and just a point of clarification, I think we've talked about this, but all high school student athletes are required to submit an attestation prior to practice and/or games, correct?
Correct. Yep, they are. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Stacy, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. So separate from that, I guess maybe just kind of pulling from what Ava said in her student council report, it would be interesting, to look into music and drama and see what, we may or may not be able to do for those students that, that's their love and their passion. And, so I don't know, I think just, especially as we're moving into more, looking to get more in person, getting back to somewhat more normal slowly and surely, maybe just something to consider looking into further.
Yeah, I do know that the commissioner has gone back to his medical board about singing, and he he's not gotten the approval to allow for singing yet, but he has been actively working on it. So unfortunately, that guidance is pretty restrictive in terms of what we can do around singing. But yeah, I think that, you know, continuing to work with those kids and their teachers around ways that alternative ways that we can somehow make this happen for them is really important, hugely important.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
great. Understandable that we're having to work
Mhm.
with that. Thank you.
All right, that's all I have. And I will send out a communication on Friday that summarize all of everything that I just spoke to in my superintendent's update. We'll put it on paper and send it out. So.
Just one other thing that I did want to call out. You know, we talk about mental health and social emotional. I just did want to recognize the work that the middle school counselors did, putting together a new website, putting together an Instagram page, making themselves very, very accessible. So it was fun to look at and watch, and I'm excited to see how it gets used.
Yeah, all of our school adjustment counselors have put together websites with resources, and it's really great work behind all of it. It's excellent.
That's great. Both my kids are in the middle school, which is why I saw that one.
Yeah.
Good job for all of them.
Yes, it's excellent.
Excellent. Well, I do not see anyone in the queue for public participation. So with that, we are going to, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss strategy related to with respect to collective bargaining under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 2, or Section 21, subsection A2. We will not be reconvening in public after this. Can I get a second?
Second.
Tim?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Stacy? And I'm a yes. Thank you. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 9th. Thank you. Have a good night.